This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories. And welcome to my video taking a look back at the DCEU, since the DCEU truly begins in just a few days. I wanted to look back at it. I recently, a few months ago, finished watching through the entire DCEU, and decided to save this video until just before Superman came out, since I wanted to talk about it just before, since it'd be super relevant then. And just to the Snyder fans, no, I'm not going to be talking about how great Zack Snyder and his vision are and how it needs to be brought back. So go leave your angry comment and dislike, because Snyder is not going to get too much love from me in this video. But if you're someone who is just going to be irrationally doing that, I do hope you enjoy. And let's go straight into it. And this is going to be split up into 3 sections. The first is what I'm going to be calling the Snyderverse, and that is going to be looking at the films from Man of Steel to Aquaman. I will not be looking at Joss Whedon's Justice League because I did not feel like watching that. I will be talking about the Snyder Cut, though, so since that is the only film that's going to be looked at out of order, the rest of them I'll be looking at in release order. Then I'll be taking a look at the Redirection era, which is going to be from Shazam to the Suicide Squad. And finally, I'm going to take a look at the death of the DCU, which is basically going to be from Black Adam all the way down to Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And yeah, honestly, it's going to be definitely interesting to take a look back at this and look at those 3 different eras. And just honestly, overall thoughts on them now that the DCU is truly dead and it seems unlikely it will be coming back. Maybe they could eventually do animated movies based off of the ideas for Snyder's 2 and 3 Justice League movies. But this is something I'm looking at the confirmed and released movies, not any of the rumors that we have heard of, and other movies that were canceled, like Batgirl. So let's go straight into it, starting off with our first era. And I think the Snyder era is definitely the most controversial part of this. Some people love it to death, some people hate it, some others are a little more neutral, and I say I'm more on the neutral side, but definitely don't love the era. Honestly, I do not think that Snyder really understood most of these characters well. It really felt like it just didn't feel like them. Superman definitely didn't feel like Superman. Batman definitely was the opposite of Batman. Wonder Woman, I mean, Wonder Woman was fine. Aquaman, he was also fine. The Flash would have been fine if he was supposed to be Wally West, and well, also if Ezra Miller wasn't playing him. But we're not going to be taking a look at the actors and any of the controversies around that. We're just going to be taking a look at the movie specifically and just how this universe really ultimately failed. And then Cyborg, I think Cyborg was really the only character that he understood, and really everything was done well with him. Sadly, everything that happened with Joss Whedon's version of Justice League made it that Ray Fisher would never return besides his brief appearance for the Snyder Cut. So, yeah, that is definitely a shame that the one person he got right, Warner Brothers screwed over so badly that he doesn't want anything to do with the studio anymore. But just taking a look at all of these, starting with Man of Steel, it just definitely didn't set a good tone for the universe going forward at all. Superman wasn't the good guy symbol of hope. He was essentially a god. He wasn't just an average man trying to, well, really to quote Jango Fett, a simple man trying to make his way through the universe. He was someone with godlike abilities that basically was supposed to be better than everyone on Earth and was supposed to be more important than really everyone. It really just didn't feel like Superman. The movie on its own, if you don't look at who Superman is and who really Superman is supposed to be, I'd say that Man of Steel is a pretty enjoyable movie, but knowing Superman as the symbol of hope, Superman as the ultimate good guy, the one who will do nothing wrong, and someone who would really only kill in a situation like he did when he killed Doomsday, where there was absolutely nothing he could do to stop them at all. He really wouldn't have killed Zod and would have found some other way to defeat him. And he also wouldn't have had that fight in the middle of Metropolis. He would have tried to get it away as fast as possible. It's ultimately just doesn't feel like Superman, and this is just doubled down when he goes with Batman in Batman versus Superman. I don't care what Snyder says, Batman, unless in certain circumstances, should never kill. And those circumstances are where we very clearly see him pushed to that edge and we see him break. Assuming it's not an evil version of Batman. If it's an evil version of Batman, have him kill all you want. And yes, the Michael Keaton version did kill, and honestly, never really loved that. But it just didn't feel as intense as Ben Affleck's version, who just felt like he was killing as much as possible. It felt at least like Keaton's was slightly restrained, but Batman just did not care Batman from the DCEU, and he would just go on absolute massacres. He went and I'll just say that absolutely brutal scenes. He doesn't really seem to have any opposition to guns, and the ultimate thing that makes no sense is the Joker is still alive because any version of Batman that is going to kill his first victim is almost certainly going to be the Joker. I really don't care which version it is, unless it's like Adam West, who would who again he would never kill because they'd never put in a situation where that would happen. Since well, no one's crazy enough to put him in a story that's that dark. And well, also Adam West has passed away, so they really can't do it. Technically, they could do it in like a comic or a novel, but you know what I mean. But this version of Batman and Batman vs Superman, he's just a straight up killer. It seems that he really just doesn't care, and as I said, it makes no sense that the Joker is still alive because the one thing that's going to push Batman to kill is the Joker and whatever atrocity the Joker committed to cause Batman to lose it. And just overall, Batman vs Superman, even watching the extended edition, isn't great. I remember when I first saw the trailers, I thought that the villain was the Riddler because, well, that's who Jesse Eisenberg looked like in this movie. That's who he acted like. And when I heard it's Lex Luthor, I was like, they're going against Lex Luthor. That's not Lex Luthor. And to be clear, I was not a major Superman fan back then, and I did not know too much about Lex Luthor. And when I'm saying that, someone who had no experience with Lex Luthor, knowing that Lex Luthor in Batman vs Superman was not the who Lex Luthor was, I'd say that is a pretty major mistake. And his version of Lex really just never felt like who Lex was. He felt far too psychotic, and again, I felt like he would have been someone like the Riddler, someone who's really feels just inferior and wants to prove his intellectual superiority, and that he is just absolutely insane, but doesn't really want to admit it. It just felt like he was the Riddler, and really, it just felt like the just absolutely done wrongly. Death of Superman, I mean, it was done decently well, but the impact in universe really just doesn't have too much because Superman was being feared and now he's being mourned. It honestly, it really didn't make any sense because Superman really wasn't the symbol of hope in this universe. He was seen as the guy who destroyed Metropolis and caused a bunch of death, and really there's nothing about Batman vs Superman to show that people would be mourning him, besides the people who knew him best and the few who actually did believe in him. But yeah, honestly, it just wasn't great. Suicide Squad, then after that, I mean, it's also not good. Did not think they did a good job with it, and I do know it's a lot of that was due to them trying to change direction from Snyder, and yeah, it wasn't great. Well, I wouldn't mind seeing them release the original cut of it, but yeah, honestly, really just doesn't feel like they were really sure what to do, and that's the ultimate problem with this. They were just rushing everything. They were trying to catch up with the MCU. They had Batman vs Superman come out the same year as Civil War, and I just felt like they were trying to fast forward their way to getting to where the MCU was to try and make the money the MCU was making, and that was their ultimate problem. They had to go and develop these characters individually, then have them team up, and ultimately that would have led to a just far better universe if they had, for example, like Man of Steel, a Batman movie, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, a Flash movie, and maybe not even a Cyborg origin movie. Justice League could have still been Cyborg's movie, but at least had movies for them. Then have Justice League, where you have Cyborg's origin in it still, but everyone else is established. It would be so much better. It also could have worked a lot better going into Suicide Squad if these characters were more minor antagonists. In each of these other characters' movies, you saw the Flash defeat Captain Boomerang. In his movie, you see Batman take down Harley Quinn sometime during his movie, and you see maybe well, it wouldn't be too many of them because you have to introduce some of them still. El Diablo and Enchantress probably cool to be introduced in this one. Maybe even have Deadshot also introduced in this one because it's definitely a lot of characters, and Suicide Squad probably should have happened a little later. Have a bunch of antagonists that they went up against being put away, but at least have some of these other more major ones be secondary antagonists in these individual hero movies. But it's not fully necessary, and if they've still released it around now, we had to do that, and they definitely did have time because it was 2013 for Man of Steel, 2016 for Batman vs Superman, so they could have went and we have other directors set up these other heroes in the Justice League, and then ultimately go for the version of Justice League they did have. And well, yeah, there was a Wonder Woman movie, but really only Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman for kind of like half a movie, and Superman for another like half a movie for the members, and we really didn't have anyone else that introduced so many other people in Justice League. But yeah, the original version of Justice League, that was a mess because of how obviously two different people were making it. Two people with very different directorial styles and visions. One was trying to be very MCU like, the other was basically trying to be the opposite. And that's why that movie was such a mess. But going to the Snyder version, yeah, that movie is really great, but it also does have the benefit of hindsight. Snyder very easily could have just looked at all the criticisms and problems with his version, would have had, since we don't fully know what could have been, from Snyder, what could have been from Whedon. There could have been some stuff that we really didn't like from Snyder, and he could have been like, "Oh, people don't like this," and he would have changed it around. But just looking at everything with Snyder and the Snyder Cut of Justice League, very solid movie. It was enjoyable, but still don't think it really is enough to justify saving this universe because it was in such a bad state at the point it came out. And we'll be talking about that state in just a few minutes, but yeah, honestly, that wasn't really great. And I do know I skipped over Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman, it's a fine, enjoyable movie, one of the only major highlights of this entire universe. And that really kind of shows that it's pretty bad that one of the first films in it is also one of the best ones, but really didn't have anything that hit that high besides a few other movies, which came out shortly after it, and one that was literally just a reshoot of one that we already knew had problems. But yeah, honestly, just continuing through this, after the Snyder Cut, we have Aquaman, and Aquaman definitely another highlight. Really solid film, and it didn't feel like it was going too much towards Snyder's vision. It definitely felt more inspired by a little more MCU inspired and more lighthearted fun, and that helped a lot. And definitely helped make Jason Momoa become a bigger name, and then also made him have a great relationship with DC, where he's still willing to return to be in the new DCEU as Lobo. So yeah, honestly, it is pretty interesting, and this entire era, it's just a really mixed bag. I feel like Snyder's projects, really besides his Justice League, weren't great. Really felt like they were just trying to rush things too quickly, and really just wasn't too enjoyable. But yeah, honestly, that's really all I have to say for this era. I said really disappointing and kind of insane just to think how much happened. And yeah, honestly, it's time to move into the kind of attempted rebirth of the DCEU, which is when they tried to MCU it and make it far more family friendly, make it more more lighthearted and really everything like the MCU. But that really didn't last too long because, well, we've won the pandemic and everything's starting to fall apart. This isn't too many films, but started off with Shazam, another really solid and fun movie. But really, after that, everything just kind of fell apart. Besides the Snyder Cut, which would have come out just shortly after. And going into this era, we have next Birds of Prey, started just before the pandemic began, and not a great movie. Black Mask was solid in it, but it just wasn't too enjoyable. I know it didn't do super well, and this was Death Nail into it, but not too extreme because they could have said at least towards the end of it that the pandemic did affect it, although it would have been pretty far into it because I think this movie released in either the end of January or early February 2020. And since that began and everything with lockdowns began like the middle of March, really didn't show things too well. I remember not enjoying it when I saw this in theaters, and when I rewatched it, still didn't really enjoy it. It also really just didn't have too much help where it had the absolutely insanely long title that it initially had that made it not that great. And no one really remembered it. They even had to rename it during its release so people could remember its title because it was like Birds of Prey and like the fantastic emancipation of like one Harley Quinn. Such a terrible name. And when they renamed it to Birds of Prey Harley Quinn, really didn't do much to help it, but at least it had that just awful title. In this era, we also had a few other films. Wonder Woman 1984, less said about that, the better, because no one really loved that. It didn't make them too much money either because it went straight to streaming, and yeah, people didn't really enjoy it too much. Right at the end of the middle end of the pandemic was also not a great time to release, and most people did watch it at home and didn't even see it in the theater since most theaters were still closed at the time. Now, going into the one highlight of this era, also the kind of the final film of it, we have the Suicide Squad, and this is also the beginning of the DCEU, since this is at least partially considered canon to the DCEU. Perhaps not fully, but at least a good amount of it is. The events are at least broadly part of it because there are references to it in Creature Commandos, and this is when James Gunn began to start to have his influence. And yeah, honestly, it was a really great and fun movie. Really enjoyed it, although it didn't do too well. That was mainly due to it being at the tail end of the pandemic as people were still more reluctant to go back into public and go to theaters. But I think, from what I heard, is it did really well in streaming and in physical media sales. So this is what gave Warner Brothers the confidence to go and give DC over to James Gunn. But I'm going to take a look at what truly killed it. We're going into finally the death of the DCEU just after we look at one small other project, which is Peacemaker. And yeah, still, it's just like the Suicide Squad. Great fun project and really well done. All the characters were intriguing, and it really made me appreciate John Cena as an actor because really I haven't seen him in anything besides briefly in like kids movies, and never really thought he had too much talent in those until I saw him in this and absolutely fell in love with him in R-rated projects at least. So I don't think it's great when he's in like a kids project, but when he's able to go into a full, more in-depth R-rated project, or even if it was PG-13 with a little more depth in it, I think he does such a great job, and he actually is a pretty solid actor. But now it's time to move into definitely the most insane era where the entire universe falls apart. It falls apart pretty quickly as we'll take a look with at the first film in this era of the films. And starting off, we have the absolute tragedy of Black Adam and just The Rock wanting this to be, well, specifically about Black Adam and him kind of putting the final death nail in since the film wasn't seen super well. Although I thought it was fine. The Rock obviously just played himself, but honestly, I didn't think it was too terrible. But I just enjoyed seeing the JSA in it. But yeah, this kind of began the death of the DCEU because people just started to lose interest. Henry Cavill had one attempt to come back. He was in a post-credit scene where he confronted Black Adam, but people just didn't care at all, and this pushed it to just begin its final phase of death because really nothing was going great here. And after this point, basically, Warner Brothers Discovery gave up on the DCU and all but said, "Yeah, we're rebooting this with James Gunn, and the DCEU is not continuing." And that's what just basically killed these other projects, since people knew there was just absolutely no point at all in watching them and going into them. Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Again, I guess it was fine. Nothing terrible, but the worst thing about it was that The Rock absolutely refused to be an antagonist of Shazam, and he had to fight Superman. That really messed this movie over, where they could have had a great antagonist like Black Adam. Sadly, they didn't, and they had to go up against the Daughters of Atlas, who, I mean, they really weren't too enjoyable as antagonists, and at least from my is basically completely original, maybe based off of something from Greek mythology, but really isn't one of his typical villains, and that went in and killed probably their biggest and most potentially successful franchise that could have at least moved over because, yeah, it really just didn't do too well, and that was at least partially because they think they were trying to go and have Black Adam be the antagonist, and The Rock just refused. Going into The Flash, that is, oh boy, that's definitely a interesting film. As I said, I didn't really mind it too much when I rewatched it the first time since I saw it, since it was in theaters. Still, I don't really mind it, but yeah, everything with Ezra Miller just killed this film. I think that it really just didn't do the universe any favors, and people were definitely disinterested by then because they knew this universe was over, and it really just had some final moments for certain characters, like giving Wonder Woman a final appearance, same with Batman, and going and sticking this version of the Flash in the absolute darkest timeline where he's stuck in the Batman and Robin universe. Which, I mean, I think technically, like chronologically, this should be the final film in that universe. Say that, at least chronologically said, although Aquaman still is said to be that. And it could have just been he resets the timeline and they're stuck in the Batman and Robin universe and trapped there forever. But yeah, honestly, this era really just films that were, I don't even say terrible, they were just kind of mediocre, and then they were just kind of forgotten about because everyone didn't really care about this universe. Blue Beetle, that's honestly was a great film, but it really got screwed over again by no one caring, and it is basically being retroactively put into the DCU since it really doesn't have anything contradicting to that universe, and really nothing connecting it to the DCEU. And honestly, I'm glad for that because it's a pretty solid thing, and while he's not going to be returning to live action films, he'll at least be getting an animated series, and it'll be great to see these characters continue because it's good to have a more obscure character like Blue Beetle get some recognition and be able to have more minor characters have a spotlight since, yeah, there's just a lot of other crazy things going on here. Finally, going to Aquaman the Last Kingdom. This film definitely has the poetic end for what the DCEU is. The film, again, it was fine. Not really terrible, not incredible either. Again, it was sabotaged by the fact that everyone knew that this universe was dead, and really, no one had too much interest in it. People saw it, but not too many. The film was enjoyable, but as I said, it heads with a perfect metaphor of what the DCEU is. And that's seeing Orm grab the cockroach and shove it into the middle of the burger. And that's basically what the DCU is. It's a collection of some pretty decent ideas with some absolutely terrible ideas shoved into it, which is basically the burger with a cockroach shoved into it. I just thought it was absolutely poetic. That's kind of how it ended, and yeah, honestly, this universe just really was never going to work because of how much they rushed it and just how much it sabotaged it. But yeah, honestly, I really hope that James Gunn doesn't fall down these same mistakes and is able to go and save the DC brand, and with the DCU that he is able to go and do it. Hearing some solid things about Superman so far. very excited to go and see this. I already have at least 2 viewings planned for this weekend. I'll be seeing it at least on Thursday and Friday, and possibly even Sunday. And yeah, honestly, really excited for it. I really am glad that we're going to be getting a reset because this universe was just such a mess that it really kind of did need a restart. And even though it's a slightly soft reboot where some of the stuff is still canon, I'm still glad that it still overall is just getting reset and that we're going to be getting just some really solid content from James Gunn this week because just really everything I've seen and heard about Superman is giving me complete confidence in it. And yeah, honestly, I just want to know what you think. Please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next episode of Legends and Theories. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.